Thank you all for coming. Hello, my name is Meredith Hoskin, and I am president of the City of Alameda Democratic Club. We are the local organization for the Democratic Party. But today we're talking about a nonpartisan issue that impacts us all. Things like our roads, our climate resiliency, building upgrades. So today we're going to focus on Alameda infrastructure, and we have a couple very special guests from the City of Alameda. I would like to introduce Danielle Mieler and Aaron Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Danielle. Oh, I can run it.
Yeah, sorry, I changed it up.
All right, great, thanks. I'm Danielle Mieler. I'm Sustainability and Resilience Manager for the city. I'm joined tonight by Erin Smith, our Public Works Director. I'm going to give the presentation. She's probably going to answer all of your real questions. So we're here tonight to talk about our infrastructure needs and how we can prepare for the future and plan for a more resilient island. Hopefully all of you are proud to call Alameda home. I like to think that we have a high quality of life here in Alameda, and that really depends on having infrastructure that works. And we have about 145 miles of streets. We get about 78,000 public safety calls. That's to our 911 dispatch center. We have 300 acres of parks, about 60 miles of bike lanes, and about 80,000 residents, all depending on that infrastructure. And as you probably also know, our infrastructure is aging. We are an old community by and large. Our roads, bridges, storm drains, our public safety facilities built, many of them, some of them 100 years ago when they first started to be developed. And they are at aging and not sized or not appropriate for today's or our future climate. We're seeing more frequent storms, flooding and sea level rise. We've experienced this during king tides and winter storms, which is really a preview of what future sea level rise will look like. And of course, living where we do, in the Bay Area, we have the risk of major earthquakes on several faults. So yeah, as I mentioned, our storm drains were built for a different era. They were built for a time when we had less intense and less frequent storms. That is changing with climate change. Our streets and neighborhoods and roads flooding more frequently during storms and king tides. And our sea levels will continue to rise. We are increasing risk to homes and businesses as well as access to on and off the island. And we have relied and hope to rely on federal funding to cover much of this cost. I've experienced, we lost $50 million in grant funding for one of our sea level rise projects. There are other grants that have not been available to us during this current administration. We also have other infrastructures that don't meet current safety standards. Our bridges and fire stations, many of them built many decades ago. They need to be upgraded to meet current seismic safety standards. And we need to make sure that they are operational when we have a major earthquake or emergencies. So they can respond. Here in Alameda, we have old streets as well. Most of our infrastructure is old. Our infrastructure, our pavement condition is pretty good. It could be better. It's not as good as, say, Dublin. It's better than Oakland. But trying to keep up with the pace of paving that needs to be done with the funds that we have is a challenge, falling behind. And the cracks, the potholes, this all impacts especially older adults, students, people with disability trying to get safely. All of this need creates a long-term financial strain for the island. We have estimated over $800 billion in unfunded infrastructure needs, and I think we can guess that it's probably higher than that now. Without a dedicated funding source, this would need to come from the general fund, and our general fund is not sufficient to cover the need. It's really intended to pay for ongoing operating costs like parks and response, And the longer that we wait to address these issues, the more expensive they become. We have inflation and the cost just increase. So one option, nothing has been decided yet, but one option that is being considered is a $300 million local infrastructure bond that could create a dedicated funding source for our critical infrastructure needs. This would need to be decided by City Council, and if they decide to put it on the ballot and if voters approve it, property owners would pay an estimated $49 per year for every $100,000 of assessed value. That's not the home's market value, but the assessed value on your property taxes. So some of the things that this measure could fund are preventing flooding and addressing sea level rise, repairing our potholes and improving traffic safety, maintaining and repairing our stormwater infrastructure to prevent flooding and keeping pollution out of the bay, and supporting our public safety response to critical fires, crashes. Any measure that we put before the voters would include fiscal accountability and oversight. All the funds would stay local in Alameda. There would be an independent citizens oversight committee, mandatory annual audits, and none of the funds would be used for staff salary protections. All of it focused solely on infrastructure. So we are taking feedback from residents right now. Some of you may have received a flyer or a mailer at your home. You may have seen on social media, we're asking for feedback. So we have a website with more information, and on that website is a survey. We're inviting you to provide your input. We can also take your questions, and would love to hear from you tonight. Which projects are most important to you for the long-term well-being of the island? What concerns would you like to see addressed? That's all I have, and Aaron and I are happy to answer any questions that you have.
Everyone's concerned about the balance between the city and the county, like you mentioned, the bridges. I know the bridges are county. So how do those things fit together out of the city?
So the three bridges the bridges on and off the island are operated and owned by the county. Those are not the responsibility of the city, but the city is responsible for the roads that get to the bridges.
Is this bond that takes a 50% majority or 51%, or is it a super majority?
It is a super majority. It would be a super majority of council and a super majority of the citizens.
And what would be the length of the bond?
The 30-year bond.
I guess a follow-up to that one. You said it's like based on assessed value. That's kind of like fluctuating the kind of profit theme where new homeowners pay a lot higher than old. I guess why was it that way?
I'm not sure. I think because it goes on the property bill based on your assessed value.
I think that's pretty typical for bonds, and yes, you're right. Prop 13 does. Really, it's Prop 13 that puts a kink in sort of where we're in this situation why we have so much deferred maintenance, because Prop 218 really impacted revenue coming in. But using the assessed value, not the market rate value, the actual assessed value that's on your property taxes is pretty typical. And yeah, it would be for 30 years, and the funds wouldn't come all at once. They would be given in tranches, but an estimate is around 30 years that you would see an assessment on your property tax bill.
Thanks for looking ahead and thinking about our infrastructure. I'm curious about a couple things. One is, has there been any thought about putting up a seawall, for Harbor Bay so that doesn't go in there? And then two, why put police and fire in this when they take up most of our general fund? Like, it looks like this is a supplemental to, make sure that we have everything. To me, the fire and the police are already like eating up almost our entire city budget. So like to put them in this as well makes me less inclined to vote for it, but I'm just wondering,
I'll start with the first question. We have a project. I'm not sure what part of Harbor Bay you mean, but We know that there is a vulnerability around the Veterans Court area and Lagoon Outfall and that whole stretch of shoreline kind of in front of the Harbor Bay Club. So we're working on a project right now. We've completed designs, we've gone to council, we've had a number of community workshops for a levee that would help fortify the shoreline there. And then beyond the lagoon outfall, there's still not a levee is not needed, but we need to kind of improve the shoreline, and just kind of maintain it where it is, but the elevation is high enough. So we're working on a project there right now. That is the project where we were going after a FEMA BRIC grant. It was a $50 million grant. The program was canceled. The program is maybe back, maybe not back. We're not exactly sure what our status is, but we have those funds by now. Advancing that project. And without that grant, we did go get a state grant. And so we're continuing with the state grant, and we're hoping that we'll have. But once we get past the design phase, the construction, the funds that we need for construction are much more significant. And so funds like this would help us pay for those much more significant.
Hi, Laurel. That's my middle name. Nice name. Police and fire. Police and fire do take up the majority of general fund revenues. I can just hold it for their operating budget. And while part of that operating budget does contribute to facilities, that amount that they contribute, like all the other departments do, is really for the general maintenance and upkeep of the facilities that we have. There isn't really sufficient money for the really remodeling and new fire station that's needed out west. And the remodeling is really for twofold. One is for seismic upgrades, because most of the facilities, except our lovely Fire Station 3 and Emergency Operations Center, were built to previous standards, not to current standards. So that level of effort is not what's typically funded in their operating budget, which is just a normal contribution for basic maintenance of existing facilities. So the projects that would be funded through this would include things like seismic upgrades. There's also just really safety issues with our firefighters and the ability for them to decontaminate after fighting a fire before going into their living quarters. They don't have that in many of the facilities, so some of this would go into doing that. And then also the fire station out west, it would be really meant to not only have coverage that's needed out there, but also consolidate a lot of their administrative offices into that location, which is going to allow more room in Fire Station 1, 2, and 4 for those decontamination zone and other safety improvements that are needed for the facilities. As it relates to police, police is the same. They contribute a certain amount for the general maintenance and upkeep of their facility. What that building really needs is also seismic upgrades, as well as just really an optimization of space in there. And an evidence storage room, which they don't have. It's not up to standards. And so that's sort of an outstanding project that's just not able to be funded with ongoing general fund revenue.
Is there a way to cut that piece out of this? Or, because it feels like it's a tack on so that they can.
Yeah. So, I mean, conceptually, yes. And certainly you can voice your opinion, and ultimately, this will go to, ideally this goes to council. We still are doing some polling to see if it even makes its way to council, but you can absolutely express that. What informed what we're talking about tonight was polling that was done late last fall. And there was a really strong response for public safety response, safety, ensuring we're able to respond in case of disaster. So it's really informed by a broader polling that was done, but absolutely continue to express your input.
See you said.
Yeah.
Okay. Come over. I'm Alice. I live near an existing seawall, and it kind of it's definitely deteriorating. I'm taking it that this bond probably doesn't apply to fixing something that already exists, but I think it's located between the Bay Farm Bridge and roughly the end of High Street, and it features in a lot of the photographs in the promotions about sea level rise. There's of the storm waves coming over it. It's at the Reef Center, it was in some of your stuff. Anyway, I'm wondering what the thinking is on maintaining something like that. It's really is falling apart, and it's adjacent to the bike path, which I have seen in the 2030 transportation plan plans to repair the bike path, but the wall that's on the outside of it, just haven't seen any addressing of that. I realize it's expensive, but would this do anything for that, or how do we act on that?
You talking about behind the fern side? Or what?
No, behind,
Which-
the seawall with the concrete path that's right behind the Bay Farm Bridge on the main island side.
Do you know where the small mines,
Big size.
the daycare
Yes.
center is
Mhm.
over
I
there?
Yeah.
think that seawall is owned and maintained by the HOA. I could be wrong.
It's not.
The
It's
r-
actually not.
Is this
I
near
also looked into
Is this the
that.
Ravenswood
Yes,
area?
it's
Yes.
adjacent to Ravenscove, but there's
Ravenscove.
an easement of the city granting that easement to BCDC. So it's clearly, I mean, no one at the HOA thinks that it belongs to them, and actually some of the old timers at the HOA, who have been looking into this, because I'm worried about that seawall, right? They say that wall was there before the construction that built that community.
We can look into.
It predates
I'm
it.
happy to give you my card and follow up. I know we've done
We
some,
actually exchanged on it a little bit in the past.
Okay.
but It was before the pandemic, and of course, everything got.
Sure.
disrupted. But it would be good to pick up on it.
Happy to.
Because, at this point now, the rebar is rusting out, and you can see through it in some spots. Yeah, so.
What I would say, just kind of more generally, big picture, is that one of the things that we're doing as a city right now is we're working on a comprehensive shoreline adaptation plan that's really looking at all of the stretches of the Alameda shoreline and identifying kind of what needs to be done and what's the priority and when do those projects need to go. Some projects need to happen earlier to address kind of near-term sea level rise. Some projects can wait until later. And then there's also ownership issues. Not all of the shoreline is owned and maintained, the responsibility of the city. So also trying to figure out kind of who's the responsible party. In some cases it is the city, in some cases it's not. And how can we kind of stitch together a strategy that can really protect the whole island.
Just tagging on to that, what is new about the fixing up the lagoon walls? Which are falling into the lagoon.
Yeah, so some of the, are we talking the South Shore Lagoons or Bay Farm? South Shore. South Shore. Well, some of those walls are owned by the adjacent property owner. The walls, the portions of the walls that are owned by the city, like here, like Powell, where Oak, we call it Lagoon 3, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Yeah. Those are city responsibility. We have looked at the need for that, and that is part of our capital budget. We have funding for that. So I don't know necessarily this funding would be approved for that, but that is on our radar, at least the portions that are city owned, which is not the entirety of the seawall.
It's been on the radar at least 20 years. I'm kind of worried about it. So you said we had $800 million worth of infrastructure concerns. And we're looking at a bond that's less than half of that in today's dollars, both of them are. I don't know how long the design phase takes, and then going out to bid takes, and implementation takes. So if I had some idea of what design, going out for bid for an RFP, and implementation starting, that could be helpful in figuring out the other 500 million is going to cost a whole lot more than 500 million very shortly.
Yes, time means money for sure. So I can answer your question generally, and if you want to get more specific, that's fine. The city, when bonds are issued, assuming again this passes council to get on to the ballot, and then it passes by vote. We wouldn't take all 300 million at once. And the reason why we wouldn't do that is because there are requirements that 85% of it needs to be spent within a 3-year period. And you're absolutely right, there is a run-up time before construction that includes design, et cetera. So we would, once the measure passes, we would really be looking at project delivery, what's feasible, how we staff up, and how we do that, while also taking into consideration, if design for, sorry, Laurel, but just for example, a remodel of a fire facility, as an example, takes a year, we're estimating that cost, including that inflation. Does that make sense? So we are aware that time is money, and when we do cost estimates, we have that put in there. And the 300 million versus the 800 million, a lot of that comes from, again, previous polling and sort of what that $49, what that really is a number that generates 300 million without, that being
So I got that part of it.
Yeah, so it's that sort of finding that sweet spot where we think residents are willing and wanting to vote for that and incur that financial cost.
So I'm assuming what you're saying is that from polling, that there's a reasonable chance at the $49 limit rather than say at a $55 limit.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep.
The other thing I would say is with that gap, we know that there is still grant funding out there that we can go after. And part of the strategy would be to use our local funds that we can leverage and then use that to access state, federal funds. So hopefully we'll be able to, we wouldn't necessarily pay for the entire amount of a project just from these funds, but it can help us access other pots of money.
I had a question. It was about the structure that's mentioned here, independent citizens oversight. I was wondering, how does that fit in to distribution?
I can share with you what I would know. So any measure that would come onto the ballot that you would vote for will include language regarding an independent. So it would not be city staff. It would be members of the public that would be on a committee. And their job and what you vote for will, and what goes to council will have these project priorities and even as detailed in some respect as a project list. And then the committee's job is to make sure the funds is spent to align with what exactly you voted for. And so that would form after the measure gets adopted and before monies are spent.
In addition, it's my understanding that when the city decides to go issue bonds, that city council will be the body that will decide to issue the bonds and what the purpose of issuing those bonds is for. And then the independent oversight committee will make sure that what the money gets spent on is aligning with what the voters approve.
That's what I was wondering about, the alignment between the two organizations, the city and the independent oversight.
Well, is that a question or?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In reference to.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of infrastructure, something I'd really like to see more than a new fire station is bathrooms at the soccer fields and more soccer fields. Like most of our kids play soccer, and I've been watching my kids play soccer for 15 years, and I've been using a porta potty. And I travel to Hayward and San Lorenzo and all these places that have a lower tax base than us. Have nice soccer fields. They have actual bathrooms with running water, and it's a little bit. It would be nice if our city had that for us, and so I would just like to put that out there. I know it's not part of sea level rise or preventing, storm damage, but if you're talking about infrastructure, that would be something that I would enjoy, is to not have to use a porta potty every Saturday and Sunday.
So I think what I would say to that is that the proposal that we came up with was based on what pulled the strongest among Alameda voters. You can absolutely make that recommendation to City Council as they're refining that project list when it comes to that. Thank you.
I don't know if this is the right forum for this question, and I don't totally know how I'm going to ask it, but I'm curious about what is in place to ensure that changes in rooms are making happen. Because I heard you mention something about some buildings need to be updated because they're based on old code, codes of the building, and obviously that's the need to. And we're going to have to do this for our. So what are we doing to try to just so that we're not running into new situations where, oh, there's this new code, now we have to spend more money to update with this new thing that may or may not actually. Repeat the question, please. Oh my gosh, how do I say that? Yes,
Want me
please.
to summarize?
Yes,
And
please.
if I get it wrong, please let me know.
Yeah, yeah.
The question was, how do we design these new improvements so that they're future-proof and last long into the future without quickly becoming outdated?
Yeah, and then doing this again.
And then doing this again. So I'll speak in this, I think different asset groups maybe have a different answer, but as it relates to like our piping underground, we do now. So, and I won't go into too much detail because I might lose you, but like when we do master plans for like our stormwater system, and in the past when it's called a design storm, it's like, hey, what's the design storm's 10-year frequency? So it's like it's only has a 10% chance of happening in any given year. That's typically in the past. To define that storm, we've looked backwards. What is that storm? And now with climate change, that's all jumbled up because we're like, we can't look back because it's not really helping us predict what's going forward. So there's these really smart hydraulic modelers that are, really knowing how to understand current storm and how to design our pipes and our pumps for that climate change with contingency, right? Since climate change is unknown, but there's a lot of data and science now that can inform looking forward versus looking back. So I feel fairly confident that we have both in-house and we use a lot of consultants with what we do, the technical expertise for designing those future improvements. And I know Danielle and the great work that she's doing, they're looking at scenarios out, 100 years. And then oftentimes you build an infrastructure regardless of the context that's changing. Typically, if it's concrete, it's going to last 50 years. So you wouldn't necessarily build something right now for that 100-year scenario, and tell me if I get anything wrong, Danielle, but you would build it for the life of that piece of infrastructure. So if that thing's going to last 75 years, what do we think those conditions are going to be in that 75 year? And can we design it in a way so that it can adapt to those later years if the facility is still in good shape? So that answered some of your questions. Yeah. And then as it relates to facilities, that one's a little trickier because we can't necessarily predict future code. But oftentimes, just like the facilities, at least Fire Station 1 and Fire Station 2, those are quite old. And typically you'll build something to modern day standard, and it's not unexpected that it will soon be outdated. But then here we are. So I think any building is not really designed to last more than 75 years, really. And I know particularly as it relates to fire stations, there's a lot of very robust design that goes into them to meet certain standards related to fire safety, that those things will last 75 years. And we design them now all with new thinking around like well-being for firefighters and safety. There's so much that goes into design now that didn't go in before, that I think we can feel fairly comfortable that our facilities are going to last us 75 years.
That's so helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Even just knowing like the average lifespan of those, you can tell I do not have a history of this. So it's super helpful even just knowing that. A new question in the background.
I'm wondering about from Weber Street to Borneo. I don't know whether I'm not sure that the city has looked at that seawall. That's the old original seawall. And I don't know whether the property owners that own property do the responsible. I know at the end of every street, the city appears to be responsible. But that whole old seawall is interesting to look at from the water. And I wonder if talking about zoning and talking about what was filled, that is what's in South Shore up to, to what was the original shore.
Yep. So as we said earlier, much of that is privately owned. And yes, the city does own the portions at the end of the right of way. And those would be it's sort of a difficult thing. Like, are we just going to replace this section of wall and not have a more coordinated effort?
That seems to me to be critical
Yeah.
to preventing the, you know, the total wreckage of the property.
Yeah. And further challenging is like the north side doesn't have an HOA, at least the west side, or
No, the west side has the HOA.
that's what, yeah, the north does not.
So I know the north side does not.
Yeah.
Floating by the state of that. It's all along the state border. And it would seem to me that it would be within the interest of the city to do some sort of.
Yeah.
Because that's important, that's big money, you got big money.
Yeah. I'm hearing it loud and clear, and I will definitely make a note of that. And I head back to the office, and we haven't really had this as an active project, but I'm hearing it loud and clear. So thank you.
So, the bond measure seems like a necessary idea, but since it is 300 million and there's 800 million of necessary stuff, right? There obviously more has to happen, right? And I sat in on the presentation. I'm not really sure who was involved in it. I think you were on it, Danielle, about the levies that were going, that $50 million project that got pulled, right? Mm-hmm. That with the levies that are going to be along, actually see them from where I live, across on the Bay Farm side, right? Mm-hmm. It seemed like a great idea, and of course, you know, given what's going on in the feds, and you know, this is a Democratic club, so we're pretty aware of that. Is it plausible that some of the stuff's going to get fixed and funded again if we're all able to make some changes in what's happening with the federal granting, the powers behind federal granting? Could that come back?
Yes, I think it is plausible, possibly even in this administration, that some of that funding comes back. That grant that we lost was litigated in the courts, and they were required to restore it.
Oh, wow.
So I think it is absolutely possible. The other thing I would say though is that all of those grants come with typically a 25% local match. And when we're talking about a $50 million project, that is more than, for that one project, it's more than our general fund can bear. So having a dedicated infrastructure fund like this would help us to leverage those federal dollars with some local funds.
Great.
Technical question.
Any other technical questions about infrastructure or the bonds that we can answer? I think there's a follow-on discussion.
Where are you at? So I'm basically coming in
the process.
cold. And we did this, what, 3 or 4 years ago, and we put the bond measure up. It was matched by the school board's desperate need for money, and people went for the desperate need for schools and not this thing. And it looks to me like we're doing the same thing we did before. We just added more things that's now falling apart.
So
where are we here?
It was before city council, or the decision was made not to put on the ballot at that time. We late last year had a series of workshops with council to talk about the infrastructure need. We've been doing community outreach, we've been coming to meetings like this. We've done mailers, we've been posting on social media, getting community input on considering this measure. We've been doing some polling. We do have polling that's happening this week. So if any of you may be contacted by a pollster this week about City of Alameda, it's probably related to this infrastructure bond, and I would encourage you to respond to that poll. And then it's going to go, depending on how that polling turns out, will go before City Council for their consideration in the first meeting of July, and then again the second meeting of July if they decide to put it on the ballot, and then it would be on the ballot in November.
Okay, so then you do not have answers to your polling questions at this point.
I have, we did do polling a few months ago. And so we had some early polling results. Now we've done some outreach, we've had more discussions, we've refined kind of what the measure might look like, and we're doing another round of polling this week.
Do you have any answers from those polls that you can tell us?
I know a little bit of what was responded on those polls. Some of the types of projects that we put forward here were projects that polled the strongest.
You're wanting a priority list. Is that correct?
Right. So the list that's right here, these buckets here generally were kind of the buckets that polled the strongest when we did that.
Are these in order? Flooding is big and important.
Flooding was the highest polling issue. I'm not exactly sure about the other ones, but I think it is general.
Yeah, Jen. Yeah.
So were the surveys sent out to every citizen? Or are they sent out to how does that look?
And then there's polling that's done, and that's a specifically valid survey. So I don't know how to make those decisions.
Yes, two separate things. There, yes, as Danielle mentioned, there was a card and it has the same QR code that's probably at the end of this slide. And there's a general survey anybody can take anytime. And then in addition to that, yes, we've hired third-party experts that, obtain statistically valid polling data. And that's happening now. My understanding is that they try to reach a statistically valid data set in a variety of different ways: mail, phone call. I'm not sure if there's door to door, but they do try to reach people in a variety of different ways.
Is there plan B? Like, we don't think, especially coming off this week, that the bond measure is viable. Like, is there a plan B?
I can speak to some of that. We could take it maybe each topic, but like as it relates to paving and potholes and roadways, the money that we spend right now comes from the state through gas tax, vehicle registration fee. That dollar amount and what we allocate to paving right now in the 4 to 5 million, we would continue to have that and do that. Right now, that level of investment, our overall condition score it's not quite enough to keep that condition score, but we're not drastically falling. So we would continue with our normal investment until we find other sources of funds. So that's what would happen on the paving. In regards to like stormwater infrastructure, we also have a rate that you all pay it's collected through the property tax roll, but we just pay them to do that on our behalf. It's money that goes directly to here. We have that stormwater revenue. It's just, again, insufficient to tackle some of these projects, but we would continue to plot away with the money that we have in the hopes of, as Danielle mentioned, leveraging grant dollars. And then, facilities is challenging. I think they're without a major revenue source. I think tackling, especially a new station, would be very challenging. In regards to some of the remodeling, again, we have a certain allotment that we do every year, and whether we reprioritize or sock money away there and build up funds, there's different things we could consider there. I'll let Danielle talk about sea level rise, just so she's a bit more familiar with all of that.
I think for the sea level rise projects, it's a similar situation to the facilities. We don't have a dedicated revenue source and have certain thing that can pay for sea level rise improvements at this time. There are other types of taxes that we could possibly consider, but we have not explored those at this time. And so we really would be relying on state and federal grants. And because we would then still need a local match, we would probably be doing much smaller kind of projects are much smaller grant amounts so that our general fund could support the match on these.
Great questions.
Sales tax of sorts considered as a county-wide regional infrastructure plan, and matches the general fund that you would need.
We have to acknowledge Danielle and I were not part of the team at the very beginning of this, so we might not have all of your answers, but we can definitely follow up with you, Tyler. Hi, Tyler. So we can follow up with more information on why the infrastructure bond. My understanding is it's a dedicated source where the general tax can get frayed in a lot of different directions, but we can find out exactly what was explored earlier last fall and get back to you on that.
Okay. Questions. Thank you so much.
All right, well, now we can get into kind of the partisan side of things. So I want to take a minute to introduce a few special guests we have in the audience. We have two of our democratically elected city council members, Tracy Jensen, Greg Bowler. Thank you for coming. And then we have Mike DeWind in the back row from our favorite local Alameda Firefighters Union, Local 689. So thank you all for being here. And then another special guest we have is Drew who's one of Alameda's transportation commissioners, who's going to talk a little bit about if we go with the bond measure, how is it going to pass? So I'll give you Drew.
Thank you for that lead in and a big mission here. And thank you also to city staff. One thing I've found serving on the Transportation Commission is just for such a small city, like Alameda is not that large. City staff are just so strategic in both the resources they have in-house, the consultants they bring in, and a consistent theme I see across transportation, housing, recreation, a lot of different fields as this city punches above its weight. And that's really thanks to the work of staff. But they can only do so much given the city's general funds and given revenues available. So like a theme that on the City Transportation Commission that we dug into this past year is this is the city's first fiscal year where general fund is going towards those paving programs that Director Smith spoke about. So just even fixing the current number of potholes, the gas tax isn't covering that. And for better or worse, we've got some elected saying, well, what if we give a gas tax holiday? So we've got a lot those kinds of issues to deal with. All that said, I've had a chance over the last couple of years to chat with some of the folks as this has been coming together with Jen Ott, Sarah Henry, and the city's consultants, and speak in a super external manner because city staff are limited in collecting feedback, in educating the public, but they need to be mindful not to get into, as Meredith said, the partisan side, the persuasion side. So I thought maybe this leads into a discussion, people's thoughts, Q&A, just to highlight a couple themes that have come up recently, and also to peg this against the recent election, because I've been seeing these news headlines that are like, yay, this passed, and boo, this didn't pass. And I don't want to draw too much, but just to highlight some themes that could inform others' thoughts as well. I think we're seeing a number of examples. Voters trust continuity. They trust programs that already exist, that they know they depend on. They depend upon clarity, knowing what they're funding. and it all has to be undergirded by, again, trust either in the institution, in the program. I ran through a couple of these June measures. San Francisco just passed a over $500 million measure for earthquake and seismic repairs. Peralta is renewing its parcel tax. And up in Sonoma and Marin County, they're renewing with over 70% their own transit sales tax extension. And just looking at some of these examples, you can counter them. You can counter them and see a lot that is lost. But I think these provide examples of both messages that resonate with voters as well as how it builds upon the strength of those institutions. So anyway, I'm glad to go into so much detail on projects or on messaging, pros and cons, but I thought I'd throw those out for other folks to react to their thoughts and questions. Yeah.
So I feel like it's going to be an election year of asking everyone for money. Like we're going to be asked to give money to save local public transportation. That's very important. Like, should we be concerned seeing some of the funding measures that didn't pass in this primary, like people's attitude toward being asked for money this year and all the measures that are going to be on the ballot asking for it?
Yep. Right. So to get back to the question about sales tax, the November ballot will have a 5-county sales tax increase proposed to save BART, save AC Transit. Personally, I think that's really critical. I also think it's safe to assume that is going to be a big ask of voters. It's going to raise sales tax, it's going to mean the Bay Area is highest in the state for sales tax. I think that's best seen as a regional measure that should pass, but it needs to pass on its own merits across the whole region. Alameda needs to consider that context and know that's on voters' ballots as well. But I think there's also a message that we can all be working with that's about Alameda as one city within the broader area. This being likely a very different form of tax. For better or worse, a property tax is a bit more progressive than a sales tax. So I think down in the nitty gritty, there are messages to work with, but yes, overall, at the end of the day, voters need to feel like they're going to get important services they depend on here and that they can. Turn that into a broader question too. I don't want to go in myself.
I think the other thing too is that if we don't pass it, it's gonna be like so much more expensive later. So it's kind of like we'd be kind of pushing off money that is going to need to be spent down the road. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Right?
Yes. Well, and I think I will say this $800 total estimate is a weird number to work with. Because to echo Danielle's point, some of this is about the city getting funds to leverage additional external funds. So much of transportation, it's funded at the federal or state level. You see the Oakland Alameda Access Project, it's over 150 million now. That's not here, for better or worse. And then also for some of the city's signature initiatives, whether it's sea level rise, an Oakland Alameda bike ped bridge, those would be funded primarily by external state or federal. But the city does need flexibility to do the local match. That's what really unlocks all those possibilities. Please.
Hi, I'm Wyatt McDad. I'm a member of the club, and I was curious, what do you love about serving on your board? Like, what do you love about it? What's exciting to you? What are you working on that you can't wait to tell us about? And the second question is, what do you find the most challenging about serving on the particular board that you serve on?
Sure. So I'll start. So what's challenging here? I'll just say personally, what I find challenging is I am a very visual person. I like looking at things. I like standing at whiteboards at work. And it turns out that like commission and board meetings, it's all verbal. Everyone is just talking. And also the format doesn't exactly allow you to say, hey, let's pull up that Google Doc and edit it together. So that just personally has been, I'm also not a lawyer by training, say, think other fields of work that are maybe a bit more verbal. What I enjoy, I will say, to echo my point earlier about city staff here doing a really good job. They bring some really well-formed and very sophisticated projects to these boards. They bring these big strategies that involve multiple projects working together, and sometimes it raises feelings, but the feelings and the public input, I think, pairs very well with a lot of that pre-work that's done. So I feel like those of us on the City Transportation Commission, even if we don't fully agree on some of the specifics, get some really great projects pre-work to work with and get to provide some input. Here's some more folks as it kind of gets shaped. Please.
Back on messaging
Yes.
on the bond, based on something Danielle just said, would it be correct to say that this $300 million bond money would put the city in a position to get grants and pay the local piece of it so that it actually would expand the amount of money the city can get? If we could get,
yes.
Getting the grants is not a foregone conclusion in the times, but things will change and we may be able to get the grants. But it would be right to say that this money would be able to fund the local part of those grants so that we can get the larger amount of money we need for these projects.
Yes, very much so. The FEMA grant Danielle spoke to is one of those 20%, 25% match. So yeah, so that's
so this bond money could help be that match money.
Yes, correct. Another point of comparison, my understanding, this predates me in Alameda, my understanding that's the way the main library is built as well, with a pairing of voter funds and a state grant. I think I don't recall if maybe the most recent fire station did involve state grants. Okay, don't quote me on that, but and part of, I'm just going to echo again, the hard work city staff do is just spending a ton of time following all the opportunities, and they don't have 100% success rate, but the more they apply, like it's money for the taking by cities that have the resources. Yes, please.
So I think in promoting the bond measure, I think it's important to say that how it serves as national. Most people might react, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
They'll be
Yeah.
People will be more hopeful about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's right. This is going to bring in so much more.
And it's just, yeah.
So it's good referencing the main line.
I think so, but when you think about how, how much, how much effort went into that, and what a huge fight that was for over 30 years. You know, people can be very insular.
Great. Well, really appreciating. I'll keep on echoing these thoughts of leveraging outside funds, highlighting past developments, things we take for granted now that only exist thanks to those comments. Yes, please, Meredith.
Commissioners can promote, like, pushback I could see is like, well, Camp City is the city spending money irresponsibly. So I think the local leaders can responsible stuff about
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I've been thinking about, so I also have, kids at AUSD. My kids are at Otis Elementary. That's going to be torn down in a couple weeks. And one thing I've been kind of thinking about, I wonder if others have impressions too, is AUSD has done a good job, and also with their parent and community partners at securing funds from voters, but really just demonstrating and just this message of we need these funds, but also we're really careful to deliver it. Like, for better or worse, the buildings they're building are not extravagant, but I think it seems like they've built a very good overall relationship that's led to this pipeline of modernizations across lots of campuses. And so, yes, I'd like to help kind of with similar types of messaging for the city that highlights aspects the city does well, where staff are really well equipped to do their work, and where some public resources can help with continuity, buttressing infrastructure. Sure. Well, thank you, Meredith. Again, please, I'm very open to feedback and critical questions too. Please feel free to reach out to me.
I
write a blog called The Morning Bun, so you search Google for
It's really good. It takes super complicated city policy and helps you understand it. It's called The Morning Bun, like the pastry.
Oh, yeah.
B-U-N. Yeah. B-U-N, yeah. All right. Well, any other questions or commentary about infrastructure before we turn it over to our resident data analyst, Tushan, to talk about some of the results out of the primary election? Tushan and his magic map. Tushan, you're on mute.
You'd think how many years into the Zoom era, and I still can't get this down. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Zach, perchance are you the one who's running the screen?
That is your screen remotely.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. The joys of remote calling in. I'm calling in from the Sunshine State, and while I'm going to be talking about election results, I can assure you this is 100% free of hanging chads or Supreme Courts jumping in the last minute. So what we're going to talk about is the election that we just had. What was it, 8 days ago? And if you've paid attention to any election results in the past couple cycles for our county in particular, you know how long it takes for results to come through. This year, they're moving at a better clip. There's only 20,000 results, unprocessed ballots that are left. So that's a good sign that they are picking up speed as opposed to years prior. But in general, California has had this problem of delivering results so much to the degree that actually today, the New York Times had an editorial about that and how slow election results is damaging faith in government. And I think this is one of our roles as in this party of pushing our electeds to speed this process up, because I think people want to know the outcomes of these elections with speed. What I'm about to show you is a updated map. Sorry, I just heard something on that side. Is everything coming through okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Sorry.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah, can you zoom in a bit, because we're on a really low res projector here.
Okay, I'm going to zoom in. So this map that you're seeing is similar to the one that I showed off back in November for the Prop 50 results. And right now we're looking at Alameda County in general. Every time the county drops their results, they actually send out a file that we can then go analyze after the fact. And so that's what this map does, is it allows us to visualize results across the county. And top line, to note, I believe the state of California had a turnout of 36%. Alameda County was 39%. And the outcome for the county as a whole was for Tom Steyer, not Javier Becerra. And so what we can do also here is also look at our town itself. And that's why I'm bringing this up for everyone. It's just to see, how does our town vote in these elections? Now, if you were to say that, I'm going to come back up here, our peers, our friendly neighbors up to the north, who are known for being more wildly liberal in, let's say, such as Berkeley, went for someone like Tom Steyer, you can see that our town had a little bit of more moderation with Javier Becerra. The purple is Tom. The blue is Javier Becerra, and you can see how each candidate fared in our town. So Becerra still did get 2.8% more votes than the county in our town, but Tom Steyer was really close behind. And then, so we can also look at per precinct. And I'm going to switch over to here and take a look at how each major election, the past three major elections, how have each neighborhood fared towards sort of like the most partisan race in that election. So typically, Bay Farm, zoom in more. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So typically, so what this is we have a number of precincts, and I just mapped them to the neighborhood, and this is the cumulative of those. As we saw last time, typically Bay Farm is a bit more conservative, but it's all relative. It's 78% towards 78.2% towards Democratic governor candidates versus Fernside's 84.5%. So, I mean, Alameda, obviously very Democratic, but you can see the sort of swings between each neighborhood. And if we just compare ourselves against our fellow towns, you can see how a place like Berkeley went for Democratic candidates at 94% versus Alameda went for 84% for Democratic candidates. Another really interesting thing that comes out of these data files is when are people voting? And I think a lot of people in this room probably waited, just like me, to the last couple days to go vote. And what you're seeing here is when these ballots came in over time. And as you can see, a lot of people held off until the last couple days.
Sean, can you zoom in really close?
Yes. Sorry. Thank you. Yep. A lot of people waited to the last couple days. And what we're seeing on this middle chart is, actually, let's start with this top chart. This is Democratic voters and registered Democrats and their turnout, and in their sending in of the ballots versus Republicans. As you can see, registered Republicans pretty much got theirs in because there wasn't that much choices for them, versus Democrats really did wait to the very end to send them in. I think one other thing to note is whenever we look at these results is just like how the age demographics of voters in Alameda and their turnout. So the way you read this is that 62% of people 65 and over voted versus, let's just say, a geriatric millennial like myself, where 35 to 49, that would be in the 40%. And so again, this is just an interesting thing, but also something to note as we have campaigns like this potential infrastructure bond of who votes and who we need to convince, and how we work on that messaging, because ultimately a lot of the voters still remain to be that turnout tend to be our some of our oldest citizens in Alameda. So that is like just a breeze through a lot of numbers and a lot of different charts. I can take questions, but I hope that was useful to just understanding how Alameda as a city is voting compared to by neighborhoods, but also how we compare to other cities in our county.
I'm going to use the microphone. I was wondering if you knew why voter turnout was so low. See, it's in like 30-something%. Alameda had 48, but the county was at.
Yeah. You know what? I personally do not. I've been looking for write-ups on that too. If I did dig into it, but I don't have the numbers offhand. But if I recall correctly, Prop 50 had better turnout than this election. And typically we see that primary is always a drop comparatively to a general election, but that we had such a pivotal election recently, and yet that had high turnout, and then we go down was personally a surprise to me. But I haven't been watching these as closely for long, but I'm just hypothesizing here, but like that was the prior election back in November 2025 for Prop 50 was such a galvanizing expression to the nation, versus this maybe is more just internal vibes and feelings right here for the primary. But that is just me hypothesizing.
Do we know if it had anything to do with the candidates themselves, just not having any strong pull?
Yeah. I think that's one thing. Thanks for that question. I'm going to dig into the data and see if there, or just any other reports more broadly about that, and maybe share that back.
I mean, my other hypothesis is that voter turnout in a midterm election is usually lower, and in the primary of a midterm election, it's usually even lower. But also Prop 50, I think, was also had such a big turnout because it was one item on the ballot. And so it was really easy to vote. So.
I was wondering, and Meredith, I'm sorry if this is something you've already talked to him or thought about, but I was wondering if there's a version of this report, could be a PDF or something, because it looks like this is hosted locally, that we could have to share on our website and or link on our Instagram, because I think this is information that most people don't have. Or if we do, we don't know if it's from a reputable source. And so I think being able to share this for members of the club or anyone interested would be really awesome.
I will be pushing this up into a publicly accessible place. So I'll share that with Meredith and Zach, and we can get that on somewhere. If not, I'll link you. Up.
Thank you.
Where did the young voters go?
How did the young voters go in terms of like who they voted for? Yes, unfortunately, sorry, was that the question?
The question is, how did the youngest voters vote? And the reason I'm asking is because they worked really hard to get people signed up and registered, and it would be nice to know what their results were.
Yeah. It would be very interesting to see that kind of data too. That though is not ever released from what I can tell. What you're seeing here is purely registered voters. Sorry, this one here, registered voters and their party affiliation and age, which all come with the registration, and that turnout. And what we don't, who they voted for is anonymous. So effectively, my understanding is what happens is the envelope gets brought to the registrar. They check the signature. They link that Tushan, a 44-year-old male, voted or sent in his ballot, and they put that tally in, and they actually make that public. You can see when someone has voted. After that, they open it up, and it's put into a counter, and it is not tied to me, for example, which is good, right? We do want our votes anonymous, but there's no way to sort of tie that metadata about age, gender, and location, age and gender with the actual vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, yeah, we will gather some of this information. Tushan did a great summary in our newsletter and website for our newsletter and website with this around Prop 50, so we'll have him do something similar. But thank you, Tushan.
Thank you. Round of applause. Welcome.
All right. Just a couple announcements. We're going to have a float in the 4th of July parade. I'm not sure if you want to make a quick plug.
Yeah, we're going to have a float. Our theme is Join the Resistance. So it's going to be Star Wars themed. And we are encouraging you to join us and come dressed up as somebody from the Resistance. It doesn't have to be a fancy store-bought costume. It can just look like you're from Star Wars. Just don't come as a stormtrooper or a Darth Vader or Darth Maul or anybody like that. Well, we are fighting against that. So, but yes, please come join us. It'll be fun. We're hoping to increase recruitment or engagement.
Talk to us after the meeting.
And you can, if you want, to RSVP. The last newsletter has a link. You can RSVP, which gives a head count, which would be super helpful. I just encourage you to come. It'll be really fun.
As far as we know, it's 10 a.m. on the 4th. And
yeah, if you RSVP, we can get your contact information and let you know like where we'll be and stuff like We are not going to be having a July membership meeting, and we are really going to be turning our attention to the local general elections starting in August. So we'll send out a notice for our big candidates forum, which will probably be end of August. We're looking at like August 22nd. But we'll be inviting candidates for mayor, city council, and school board. So I hope everyone will come and hear from, as we know, our local leaders are very important in this time of need. So we hope you'll all come with your tough questions for them.
The membership committee is a vital component of this club, and we're trying to make it fun for you to be here and to hang out with us, and for us to hang out with you and listen and organize. And so if you're interested in having us give you a call or invite you to upcoming events, we're planning on getting together pretty regularly and doing some fun stuff. Please stop by with Ollie's table over there, the elegant young lady standing by the table, and we'll get in touch with you. But we've got a lot of fun things planned, so we look forward to seeing you.
Hello. I have just a quick announcement as your duly elected e-board rep for Alameda, Oakland, Emeryville. I also am on the board for all the new people that don't know me as the program. But next month is the executive board meeting for the California Democratic Party, which is the party that I've been elected to. And we're having our e-board meeting at the end of the meeting to do our endorsement votes for all the things we didn't endorse the first round because we didn't pick, no one got the vote last time to the threshold required by the state party. But that process comes with a lot of subcommittees, caucus meetings, everything happening at that. If you have any questions about what's going on there, or if you have opinions about who I should vote for, because I am your duly elected rep to the state board, let me know your opinions on things. Otherwise, I'm going to try to do my best to represent all of us based on who voted for me. So, anyways, let me know. That's happening next month. Since we're not having a meeting next month, I just want to make that announcement. That's happening. If you have any questions, come find me.